how to make the orb pom pom with the loom. What you need is your loom tool, scissors, embroidery floss, pom pom trim guide, and yarn. Let's get started. So the first step is to wind your yarn onto the loom tool. So in this case, we're going to go 160 revolutions, especially when you're using worsted weight yarn. The more yarn you put on your tool, and depending on the weight, the larger your pom pom will be. So as I mentioned, this is 160 revolution with a worsted weight yarn. Okay. The trick that I like to share with people is to actually use two ends. So instead of going 160 revolution, all you do is wind 80 revolutions. So you're moving twice as fast in a lot of ways. Okay, as you wind, make sure your tension is not too loose and not too tight. If it's too tight, it's going to be hard for you to make a tight double knot later. And if it's too loose, your winding might fall off the tool. So just as you go. So when you have gone, in my case, 80 revolution or 160 revolution, just secure to any of the notches. Doesn't have to be on the same notch. Set the rest of your yarn aside. And now you're going to cut a 24-inch piece of embroidery floss. Slip it under the yarn bundle like this and pull the ends so that they're even. Embroidery floss is really great for the orb pom pom because it's really strong, so you could actually pull relatively hard so that your tight double knot is pretty tight. So before you make your first tight double knot, just flip this over to make sure that this yarn is in the middle. So in this case, it's not, so I'm going to move it a little bit with my finger. Now I'm going to tie that tight double knot. This first tight double knot doesn't have to be super tight. It's more functional of anything. So once you have that secure, wedge your yarn bundle off the loom tool. Okay, you're going to make your tight knot on now the other opposite side. The key to making a tight double knot is working really close to the center and pulling really fast. So when your knot becomes tight, your yarn bundle actually just naturally will become a circle like this. I actually always like to make a third tight double knot because also I tend to use my pom-poms for jewelry or hanging on bags or as an accessory. It's really nice to have a good tight center knot. It's what really holds your yarn together. Okay, so now I could tell that my yarn bundle is pretty tight. You could also press down the middle. It should feel very compressed and dense. Before I finish, I'm going to make that third knot. Really secures everything. And I'm going to cut the ends here. I only leave basically about maybe a 1/4 inch, if not less. You don't really need to leave a long end. Now bring back your bowl and you're going to cut all your loops. With the pom pom trim guide, just take your pom pom trim guide. Now you're just going to cut and trace the circle. This just really also helps everything move a little bit faster, because to make a really dense orb pom pom, you really need to trim down a lot, and this helps speeds everything up. Because a pom pom's a three-dimensional shape, just flip it over one side, and again, center to center with your pom pom trim guide and trim all the way around. Once you're done, set your pom pom trim guide aside. And now you're going to have a pretty round pom pom, but it's very shaggy. So what you're now going to do is you're going to focus on one area and trim it down to the density that you like. So now I really like that density, and I'm going to work that same density all the way around the pom-pom. So you're just going to go around one perimeter. Don't move all over the pom-pom. Working one side at a time or one perimeter at a time really helps you get to a round pom-pom. Once you go one time around, you'll probably go another once or twice more to clean everything up, making sure everything is at the same density. It's really cleaned up. Now what you'll have is cleaned up on one side and then two kind of shaggy ends here. Using the same technique, focusing on one side, you're now gonna curve your orb and clean this up. See how I'm just moving in one direction? So now you have a pretty good circle, or an orb I call it. And before you trim even more for your final stage, you want to just use your finger and lightly fluff your pom-pom gently. So see how yarns that are hidden will come out. So now it's going to be a little bit shaggy again, and what you'll do now is just like a real haircut at the salon. You're just going to trim very little off all the way around. Again, kind of I would use the same technique, which is working one perimeter, one side at a time. Be patient. This definitely takes the longest to perfect, but once you perfect it, you'll never forget. And this could take up to, I don't know, 5 minutes possibly, depending on sometimes the yarn that I use too. Some yarn's fuzzier than others. Some's really easy to trim down. So as you can see now, I'm actually moving my pom-pom around a lot more on all different sizes because you're just cleaning things up. Again, fluffing as you go. So it depends on how smooth you like your pom-pom and how kind of symmetrical. You could keep trimming, or you could stop. Because at this point, it's just all about just kind of cleaning up and making sure your pom-pom is round. Okay. I think we have a pretty good pom-pom. And here's your orb pom-pom.